Hello everybody, this is Player 1, and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts summary. This part we will be covering the 3 spin-offs that take place after Cage 2. Well, chronologically they don't, but they were released after Cage 2. These few games may not seem like they progress the story much, but they are still very important. And the beginning one, 358 over 2 days, has one of the better stories in the whole series. 358 Days tells the story of Roxas during his time in the organization, before Riku and Diz picked him up and put him in the simulated Twilight Town. His memories of the organization are very important to his character, and we get to see a completely different Roxas from the one we saw in 2. And also, a whole new character that wasn't mentioned at all. We see his birth, and Xemnas giving him his X to signify becoming a nobody, and his new identity. We see him work a few missions for the organization, and learn how it all works, and Axel is there to teach him. We then see a new member of the organization named Shion, who can also use the Keyblade. Over the course of the game, these 3 become very good friends, and talk to each other about a plethora of things, their problems, their feelings, even though they're not supposed to have any, being nobodies. And some interesting things happen. For one, Roxas goes into a sort of coma at one point, and so does Shion. When Roxas goes into his coma, Shion leaves seashells for him next to his pillow. And he does the same for her. Eventually, near the end, Shion learns exactly what she is, because that has been a very important question throughout the whole game. She can use the Keyblade, so she must be somewhat important. She learns that, like the Riku replica from Chain of Memories, she herself is a replica as well, taken from the memories of Kairi that Sora had. So she's kind of Sora, kind of Kairi at the same time. And she has also been siphoning off Roxas's power, making him weaker. She encounters Riku, and of course, since he wants Sora back, he encourages her to go back to him to help speed up his recovery and fixing of his memories. Shion has a very tough decision to make, and eventually goes with Riku. Axel and Roxas come to take her back on the organization's orders, but she fights Axel. And this has a big rift in the friendship. Now no one trusts each other anymore, and back when Roxas left, he said that no one would miss him, and this is why. He has basically no friends left. Even though Axel didn't want to not tell Roxas anything, but he felt that if he did tell him he was Sora's nobody, or the truth behind Shion, that he would freak out, which he rightfully would. But eventually, Roxas and Shion meet, and she tries to take him with her back to Sora. So they have a fight, and at the end, Shion succumbs and returns back to Sora. This makes Roxas greatly upset, and he wants to go to Kingdom Hearts to somehow bring her back. And since Shion was a replica and was never meant to really exist, after she dies, people begin to forget about her in her entirety. And Riku tries to stop Roxas from going to Kingdom Hearts, which leads to the fight we saw in 2, with Roxas losing and Riku opening his dark power, changing his appearance. The game ends with Roxas going to meet his friends in the virtual Twilight Town. A very tragic story, and a tragic end to the character of Shion. But the origins of the whole of Roxas' character, and a really good story at that. That ends Days, and just watching the cutscenes is a good way to experience the story, but if you can, please play the game as well. There are so many moments that are not translated to the cutscenes, and it really builds upon the friendship between all three of them. The next game to come out was not recoded, but this is the next one I'm covering. It is a very short game, and the story is basically non-existent, but the gameplay is pretty fun, and it's a little bit important to the overall story. So I would suggest definitely playing this one and not just watching the cutscenes, because that would be the better experience for Coded. So Coded helps us answer what was in the letter that was written at the end of KH2. It tells the story of young Sora, which they really like this design of Sora. They use it whenever they can. But basically, it starts with Jimmy looking at his journals that he wrote for the first and second games. And since the first game's journal was also Chain of Memories, there was only Fake Nominee in it. But he looked, and there was a new message in it. Their hurting will be mended when you return to end it. So of course, he's very confused about what this is, because he didn't write that, and no one else had access to the journal. So he goes to Mickey, Donald, and Goofy to figure it out. And to go into the data of the journal to figure out where exactly it came from, they enlist the help of Data Sora. The data inside the journal is basically a recreation of all the worlds in the journal. So they just take Data Sora, give him the Keyblade early on, and have him go through worlds to figure out what exactly is going on and who wrote the messages. Eventually, through a few worlds, Data Sora appears in Disney Castle, where Mickey and the gang are. And it turns out, after Destiny Islands, Mickey and all of them were actually pulled into the journal by Data Riku, who is actually the whole journal as a person. Yeah, I don't get it either. But basically, Data Riku takes all of them into the journal to further help figure out where it came from, because even he himself, who is the journal, doesn't know where it came from. So they go on for more worlds, and they figure out Maleficent is in the journal as well, because she's just up to her old tricks again, trying to find a place to rule. Maleficent definitely takes a back seat after the first game. So her and Pete are in the Data world, trying to conquer it. And she and Pete put bugs inside Data Riku, who then turns against Sora and them. So they fight, and to finally purge the journal of all the glitches and bugs, Data Sora goes inside Data Riku, who is the journal. So technically, he's 2 layers into the journal, to find what exactly the main bug is that's causing the weird messages and the problems inside the journal. And it turns out it's Sora's Heartless, who is literally a bug in real life, because Sora turned into a Heartless, and that Heartless was never defeated. So technically Sora should not be alive right now. So somehow Sora's Heartless made its way into the journal's data, and so Data Sora defeats it, which cleanses the journal of all its problems. But they still never figured out who wrote the message. So Data Sora goes back in to the final world, Castle Oblivion, and at the end, he encounters Data Roxas. He fights him as the final fight, and then he encounters Data Nominee, who was in fact the one who wrote the message. Data Nominee found that Sora's heart was connected to so many people, and that Sora wants to help them, such as Roxas, Axel, Xion, and a few others we'll get to later. So, Data Nominee relays the information to Mickey and Data Sora, and then Mickey writes all of that in a letter and sends it to real Sora, who then decides, well, if all these people are hurting, I have to go help them. So now we know what was in the letter, and we know Sora's motivation to continue on his journey. And that was Coded. Definitely not a fan favorite, but I like it well enough. That then leads us to the fan favorite of this spin-off trilogy, Birth by Sleep. A story that takes place 10 years before Kingdom Hearts 1 and chronicles the lives of 3 past Keyblade wielders. Each of them are deeply connected to the present story, and their stories are very interesting. The boy in the middle looks a lot like Roxas, and that is a key point that will be explained later. Birth by Sleep begins with our main characters Terra, Ventus, and Aqua. And also, for some reason, Mickey is part of the main art as well. We see a flashback of an old man in an organization coat carrying a lifeless boy who is Ventus in a white coat thing, and he leaves him at Destiny Islands. We see his heart join with another unknown heart, and it becomes whole as it was broken before. Ventus then raises his hand and summons a Keyblade and shoots a beam of light into the sky. We now go to present time in the land of departure, where the three wielders live. They are all good friends, and I've been training to learn the ways of the Keyblade. Terra and Aqua take a sort of parental role to Ventus, as he is the youngest. Aqua has made Wayfinders, which are actually the inspiration for Kyrie's good luck charm that she would make later. And Aqua says that Wayfinders are so that people are connected wherever they are, and they will always find their way back to each other. Their master, Ericus, has decided for Terra and Aqua to take the Mark of Mastery to become Keyblade Masters, and he has invited his friend Xehanort to watch over. The exam pits Terra and Aqua against each other, and during their fight, Terra exudes some darkness, which fails him from gaining the title of Master. We see Xehanort talking to a strange masked boy about Ventus. We later see this boy in Ventus's room saying that he better chase after Terra or else he'll change forever. Terra and Aqua are told by Ericus that there are creatures called Unversed threatening the worlds, and that they should go out and find how to put a stop to them. And while Terra leaves, he tells Aqua to keep an eye on him so that he doesn't use his darkness again. So Terra leaves, Aqua follows him, and Ventus follows them, for he is afraid of what the boy told him about Terra. They find the Unversed, which are beings of negative emotion. They travel to the Disney princess worlds that were not covered before, such as Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. And in the Sleeping Beauty world, Terra is possessed by Maleficent to take Aurora's heart, one of many times that Terra is used by the villains in the worlds. They all then travel to the princess worlds, and some go to the mysterious tower to seek advice from Yen Sid. And during this time, we see Ven remember his time training with Terra and Aqua in the past, before he fully got out of his slump from not having a whole heart, and he was kind of a zombie. Terra had a wooden Keyblade that he gave to Ven as a sort of memento of those times. We see Terra meet Xehanort in an area called the Badlands, where Xehanort tells him about Vanitas, a person he made from Ventus, the darkness inside his heart, and says that Terra must go find Vanitas and put an end to him. we see a flashback of when they first met Ven, and how he was not stable in the slightest, and how they both worried over him. We then see Ven go to the Badlands to face off against Vanitas. And while it was close, Ven lost, but then Mickey shows up, using an object called the Star Shard, which allows him to randomly teleport to worlds against his will. They then fight Vanitas, and he escapes into a dark portal. The three of them then head to Radiant Garden, all at the same time. Ven meets the human forms of Zaldin, Lexius, Zexion, and Vexen, who are called Dylan, Alias, Ienzo, and Evan. Dylan and Alias are guards for Ansem, and Ienzo and Evan are researchers. Of course, Ienzo is but an apprentice. Apparently, his parents are gone, and so Ansem has taken it upon himself to care for him. We then see Aqua meet Mickey and little Kyrie as they protect her from some Unversed. Aqua then puts a magic spell on her necklace to protect her from harm. The three of them then meet up in an area to face off against the Trinity armor, the first time they've seen all three of each other since the beginning. Ven got passes to Disney Town, which is the same world as Disney Castle, and he gives them to Terra and Aqua. But Terra found out that Ericus sent Aqua to spy on him, basically, and he has feelings of sort of betrayal and has kind of a falling out with his friends. He meets up with Braig, who is the human form of Zigbar, who tells him that he captured Master Xehanort. He then fights Braig, and in a sort of fit of dark power, he shoots Braig with a dark orb, which takes out his eye and gives him his eye patch and scar. We then see, however, that it was a trick, and that Braig and Xehanort were working together to bring out the dark power in Terra. This scene is him talking to Xehanort about how he's not too thrilled about being injured. We then see Ven meet up with Lee and Isa, the human forms of Axel and Syax, who were friends when they were kids. They had a falling out when they joined the organization, though. So Lee and Ven have a little sparring match with Terra's wooden keyblade, and of course Ven wins. The gang then leave and head to the second group of Disney Worlds. And after that, Terra goes to Destiny Islands to sort of recuperate. He meets young Riku and Sora, and he does the Keyblade ceremony to give Riku the power of the Keyblade. All the way in the beginning, Riku was supposed to have the Keyblade, but since he gave in to the darkness, Sora was given it instead. We then see Aqua meet Sora and Riku, and notices that Riku has the ability to wield a Keyblade, and doesn't give Sora the ability because she says that one Keyblade is enough for a friend group. She's seeing how they're all being torn apart at this moment. We then see Ven go to the Badlands and meet Xehanort, who tells him his whole past, on how he split Vanitas from Ventus so he could have a pure light and a pure darkness, who he wants to clash to form the Keyblade. Not the Keyblade that everyone has, but the Kai Blade, or X, which will then give him the power to unleash Kingdom Hearts. Now, I know I've talked about Kingdom Hearts in the past, but this is the true one. The door in the first game, and the artificial one that the organization made in the second game, were not the true Kingdom Hearts. The one you can summon with the Keyblade, though, that is the true one, which is Xehanort's goal. He tells Terra that Ericus is going to end Ven to stop the Keyblade from being formed, and we see a flashback of Ericus being told Xehanort's plan, and them having a fight. They did used to be friends, but Xehanort is too far gone at this point, and he gives Ericus his scar. So, Terra arrives at the land of departure, where Ven is, and sees Ericus about to attack him. But he steps in and fights Ericus, which sadly ends with Ericus' death. Not by the hands of Terra, though. Ericus was weakened, but Xehanort steps out from behind and ends him. He then tells Terra to go to the Keyblade Graveyard, which is actually where the Badlands is, and he ends the land of departure with the giant darkness orb we saw in the first game. Ven was sent to the Destiny Islands by Terra, and we see Vanitas there, telling him to forge the Keyblade. Of course, Ven does not want to, but Vanitas tells him that his friends are going to be there, and that he will kill them if he doesn't show. So, all three of them show up at the Keyblade Graveyard, ready to finish the fight. And Xehanort tells them the whole reason he did this. Long ago, there was a Keyblade War, where many wielders fought for the light of Kingdom Hearts to gain power. But at the end, not one survived, as you can see with all the Keyblades in the background. And Xehanort wonders what another Keyblade War would bring. Would it bring an end to the world, or would it bring great power to the survivor? So they begin to fight. Sometime Braig shows up, and he fights Aqua, mainly to distract her from the other fights taking place. Xehanort has frozen Ven, and he is incapacitated at the moment, and Terra is fighting Xehanort and Vanitas at the same time. After the Braig and Aqua fight, Vanitas comes down and tries to end Aqua, but Ven breaks out of his frozen moment and fights Vanitas, even though he shouldn't, which then leads to them combining and have a fight inside Ventus's heart of Vanitas with the incomplete Keyblade, since their union wasn't complete. And we can see here that Vanitas looks like Sora for some reason. While this is going on, outside, Aqua sees Ventus Vanitas with the complete Keyblade. So those fights happen simultaneously. Meanwhile, Terra is fighting Xehanort and wins, but then Xehanort uses the Keyblade to take out his heart, which he then sends into Terra's body, which he has cultivated with all the Disney villains and made his dark power erupt and so he possesses Terra and takes his body. But Terra's will and mind is so strong, he takes up his armor with no body and fights against Terra Xehanort. And he wins. But of course, he doesn't have his body. So his lingering will takes root in the Keyblade graveyard for whenever he is needed. And Terra Xehanort is lost into space. So is Aqua and Ventus's body, but we see Mickey pick them up and take them back to Mysterious Tower. Since the combination, Ventus's heart is no longer inside his body and has taken refuge somewhere else. So Aqua plans to keep him somewhere safe until he can find his way back, which takes her to the land of departure. We hear a conversation that she had with Ericus about what to do should he ever fall, and for her to become the new master. She takes Ericus's Keyblade and unlocks a keyhole at the back of Land of Departure, which transforms it into a white sort of room called the Chamber of Waking, which she puts Ven's body in. And she walks out, and it turns out Land of Departure was actually Castle Oblivion this whole time. A maze, so that no one could ever find Ventus until he was ready to reawaken. Aqua hears that Terra has been found in Radiant Garden. So she goes, but of course, it's not Terra, and it is Terra Xehanort. And they have a fight, which she wins, but Terra's body starts to fall into darkness, so she dives after him. She takes her Keyblade and her armor, and sends it back to the Light Realm, and she fades into darkness. Terra Xehanort loses his memories, and becomes a new person, basically. Meanwhile, Aqua roams the Dark Realm, just trying to live and trying to escape, but there is no escape. We see that Ven's heart went to Sora, who at the start of the game completed his heart when Vanitas was ripped out of it. So now Ven's heart is resting within Sora for whenever he can come save him. We see Braig talk to Apprentice Xehanort, who really has lost all his memories, but Braig is still with him whenever the plan may come into fruition again. And we finally see Aqua reach the dark shore where Sora and Riku were at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, as she meets a man in a cloak who is actually Ansem the Wise, after his machine exploded from trying to make the artificial Kingdom Hearts into Data. He was sent to the Dark Realm, and they have a nice conversation about the boy who saved the world from falling into darkness a few times. And she tears up hearing it's the same boy she saw at Destiny Islands. The final scene we see is Sora reading the letter from Coded and saying that all of these people, they made me who I am, so I have to save them. And Kairi gives him her good luck charm again and tells him to see him soon. That concludes the spin-off titles between 2 and Dream Drop. These titles were mainly for exposition and building up more characters that play big roles in the future of the series. I hope you enjoyed this part, and come back next time when we cover the prequel to KH3 Saga with Dream Drop 0.2 and the beginning of the Key Saga. See you then.